They offer full-size candy bars and bags of chips and things like that.
Full-size Snickers, full-size all kind of candy, any kind of chip you can imagine. The kids have, Sour Patch Kids.
Hello, welcome to this work study session of the Phoenix City Council. Thank you all for joining us here today. I will call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilwoman Ansari.
Here.
Councilman DeCiccio.
Here.
Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Councilwoman Guardado. Councilwoman O'Brien.
Here.
Councilwoman Stark.
Here.
Councilman Waring.
Here.
Vice Mayor Pastor.
Here.
Mayor Gallego.
Here. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, the council joins our country in recognizing National Human Trafficking Awareness Day, which is recognized every year on January 11th. Some council members are wearing blue to raise awareness around human trafficking. I want to thank Councilman Jim Waring, who chairs our committee, our task force, which has been established since 2013 on this issue. Today's meeting is a work study session. The council has made a conscious decision to have more strategic discussions and opportunities to reflect on items of importance. This is a chance for us to look at how we have spent federal dollars to fight COVID-19 and economic impacts among other areas, as well as to think strategically about how we will next spend ARPA dollars. So I want to thank you all for joining us for this important conversation. It is just a conversation today. The council will not take any votes, but it'll be a great opportunity for us to give impact, to share impacts from how we've spent the money in the past, share successes and opportunities for improvement. I will turn it over to Jeff Barton to introduce and discuss.
Mayor Gallego, thank you. Members of the council, good afternoon. Today, as the mayor said, we're here to have a discussion, an in-depth dialogue on the potential uses of ARPA Tranche 2. Today being a work study meeting, as the mayor emphasized, we're not here seeking any action, nor are we presenting you with a fully flushed out plan on how to spend the second allocation of stimulus funding from ARPA. Instead, we are here to present options and ideas that staff has put together based on feedback, issues, and concerns faced over the last 2 years as we fought the valiant fight against COVID-19. The intent today is to present options for your consideration that would not only be in full compliance with federal guidelines, but also result in transformational programs and projects that align with your concerns and recently adopted initiatives. I will briefly walk through a collection of some of the items contained in your report today, not all. I also have representatives from the various departments in the audience to address any questions or follow-up you may have on individual options. Following today's meeting, I will return to a future policy meeting with a proposed strategic plan for your consideration based on your feedback as we go through this iterative process of adopting an ARPA strategic plan. Before we begin, I would like to reflect back on some of your accomplishments and decisions over the last 2 years. We'll start with the Coronavirus Relief Fund. As many of you know, the city's use of the CRF, as we called it back then, fund has been recognized by the Treasury and the GFOA, and it ensured continuity of city services in the early stages of the pandemic when general fund revenues were threatened and extremely volatile. City received $293 million in CRF dollars, and those funds were allocated, adopted, and spent in calendar year 2020, consistent with the federal guidelines at that time. We did prioritize funding community investment programs such as small business assistance, rent, mortgage, and utility assistance, distance learning and Wi-Fi access, food delivery services, PPE distribution, and COVID-19 testing for the community. We also, you as a body, took action in June of 2020 to use $143 million worth of the coronavirus relief funds to offset public safety salaries. By virtue of doing that, you preserve city services that were threatened because of dips in revenue. So again, that's how we use the coronavirus relief fund. We also are in receipt of emergency rental assistance. Some of you have been intimately involved with this program almost on a daily basis. I do want to call out a couple of things before I go through the individual particulars of this program. In August, the city's program was recognized by the Treasury as a benchmark for its best practice of incorporating local community action agencies in the distribution process. And just recently, Treasury contacted Human Services staff seeking insight on the actions and requirements that Treasury should include in program improvement plans for underperforming agencies. For the record, Treasury has categorized Phoenix ERA program as a high-performing program. Staff have also recently requested an additional $30 million in ERA funding through the reallocation process that is the result of this performance improvement plan. So the city did receive $51.1 million in ARPA or in ERA 1 and $55.3 million in ERA 2. To date, the city has spent approximately $61.6 million cumulatively between those two allocations, and this includes assistance to over 8,400 households totaling 21,000 residents. Next, we move on to ARPA. The ARPA strategic plan, as you know, was adopted on June 8th. The last few months since you adopted that plan, staff has been busy facilitating, negotiating, and coordinating contractual arrangements with various partners. It is anticipated that our spending will significantly intensify during the remainder of this fiscal year and throughout the calendar year 2022. So again, when you adopted the ARPA plan, you were very conscious about making sure that those dollars predominantly were allocated to the community, and 75% of those funds were allocated to community. 25% were allocated to city operations, and we'll go through a couple of the different programs in a second here. And again, to date, we've spent about $20 million, but again, it is our intent and expectation that now that those contracts have been put into place and staff are managing and massaging these programs, that those dollars, you'll see an increase in that spending over the next couple of months. Reminding you of the eligible uses of ARPA. Per the U.S. Treasury guidance, ARPA funds can be used for the following. And I do want to highlight here also that for the last almost year and a half or so, we've been operating under the interim final rule from the feds. Just last week, they did come out with the final rule. So we are going through that, and there's lots of debate and discussion about if there are any significant changes. But as of right now, we haven't seen anything that significantly jeopardizes our allocations to this point. But I will keep you abreast of all of that as we move forward. First and foremost, ARPA funds can be used to support public health expenditures by funding COVID-19 mitigation efforts. We can also use the ARPA funds to respond to the public health emergency or its negative impacts on residents and businesses, as well to respond to workers performing essential work by providing premium pay. And finally, to make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. Those are the broad guidance and eligibility uses as defined by Treasury. Under the first tranche of ARPA, again, that strategic plan that you adopted on June 8th, I want to highlight a couple of things that we did in that plan. So again, putting community first and knowing that this virus was very contagious, back when this plan was adopted, you did allocate funding for community testing and vaccine distribution, and just last week you allocated additional funds to ensure that we have no service delivery gap while Omicron is on the rise. We also prioritized U.S. vets and veteran relief hotel improvements. The hotel itself was acquired using Coronavirus Relief Fund back in the first round of our stimulus funding, and last year you also allocated additional funds to make sure that that hotel was outfitted as it properly needed to be to ensure full operation. You also allocated about $4 million for additional utility rental assistance to augment and support the existing program that we had at the time that was running out of money through CRF, as well as augmenting the ERA program. You also set up $5 million for the water department to assist with the deferred payment arrangement program. And you also allocated $1 million for the landlord incentive program. And Chris Mackey and staff have been very busy with the business assistance program, as well as Marshall and her team with the workforce programs. You also allocated and made sure that we had funding available for kids and their after-school programs, because again, that was Oftentimes, our children were also impacted negatively as a result of COVID, from schools being closed, daycares being closed, and them just being shuttered in their homes and not having interaction. So again, you wanted to make sure that there was something for them to do as a result of their last 2 years of dealing with COVID. We also continue to provide additional support and resources to our arts and culture through stabilization grants. Again, these grants were focused on making sure that arts organizations and artists that lost gigs as a result of COVID-related exposures and things of that nature, that they still had operating funds to continue. As well, you also gave funding to the city on the city side to ensure that we could actually address our 27th Avenue Materials Recovery Facility improvements, or the MRF as it's affectionately known. I do want to take a moment to highlight one program in particular, and the reason I'm doing this program has been with us from day one, since the CRF days, and that's our Phoenix Resilient Food System program. This was a brainchild of our environmental programs department. Roseanne Albright has done a great job with this program. It is very well received in the community. We've got lots of community-based partners that participate in this program. And just on this slide alone, you can see some of the testimonials that we've gotten from residents. So this program has been highly successful, and it ensures that we've got innovative, sustainable food sources across our community. And we work with, again, a broad base of partners, including restaurants, schools, farmers, nonprofits, food banks, and food pantries. So again, I just wanted to illustrate this is an example of cross-collaboration across multiple lines. So now as we begin planning the next and final round of ARPA 2.0, it's important to reconcile the funds that are available to be programmed. Now, while we are expected to receive approximately $198 million in the second tranche of ARPA funding, however, I do want to remind us that several items will reduce those available resources. These include the premium pay that Council awarded to essential workers for their tireless work during the pandemic, and the COVID-related medical and workers' compensation costs that the city has incurred as a direct result of COVID-19. Those items should not be covered by the general fund, nor should they be a taxpayer liability. Therefore, they should be allocated to this second tranche of ARPA. After accounting for these items, we expect to have approximately $141 million available for programming. Now, as we move forward with this second tranche of ARPA conversation and discussion, and again, I want to keep reiterating that we're here today really just to have a dialogue. There is nothing planned, and most of what you see on this, and all of these items on this list that you'll see today, they total way more than what we've got available. So again, this is about a conversation. It's brainstorming for you. Did we hit the mark? Are these the programs that you're interested in? And I'm sure it is not an all-exhaustive list. You have things also that you would want us to consider. We did bucket these programs slightly different than we have in the last ARPA discussion. And so the categories that we'll be focusing on this time around include affordable housing and homelessness. They include workforce and education, neighborhoods, child care and senior services, heat response mitigation and sustainability, Phoenix Resilient Food System, and better health and community outcomes. So the first item that we'll be discussing is affordable housing and homelessness. And again, I'm not going to go through every single item that you have in Attachment A. I'm going to highlight a couple of the programs that we're excited about, that we think make sense. And what we're after here, the instructions that I gave to departments, was really looking for items that were transformational in nature, items that will take us to the next level, items that are outside of our norm, put us in an uncomfortable position, make us work really hard and be creative, but at the same time also be cognizant of not putting additional burden on the general fund long term. So those are the types of things that we're looking for. We're also looking for some alignment because, again, I plan to come back on another conversation when we get closer to adopting this plan. I would like to have some alignment with the various initiatives that you've adopted from the Climate Action Plan, as well as with the trial budget itself. So we're looking for synergy. So first and foremost, what I want to talk to you about is the acquisition of multifamily housing complexes. This is something that was put in place or submitted by Housing. And the thought here is, again, I've heard you time and time again talk about the lack of options for affordable housing for Phoenix residents. I've also heard you talk about the need for workforce housing. I've also heard you talk about the need to have transitional housing. So $50 million could be used to accomplish some of those things. And again, the $50 million, that's a reach. We ask departments to, again, think outside the box and think big. This is kind of go home, go big or go home. And so again, they don't have to get 50 million. This is just, again, to start the conversation. And some just may react to the dollar amount. So again, that's also part of the process of brainstorming. Next, $20 million to purchase and for the purchase and operation of shelter and transitional housing. Again, throughout the city, I think we've got to get past this mindset that all of our transitional and shelter operations need to be concentrated in one area of the city. I've also been engaged in conversations with my counterparts at the county, Joy Rich, county manager, as well as Chris Brady, city manager of Mesa. So we've been comparing notes and looking for opportunities to have a synergy between the operations that we provide. The thought there is if the three biggest entities in the valley can come together and find comparable operations, we may be able to get others to kind of play in the same game. So that's what we're looking for here. Next, $10 million to fund an all-inclusive community land trust. This is something that you would, again, give residents as well as our housing department an opportunity to get folks in affordable housing. There are a variety of different ways that community land trusts can be utilized, and this would be a first for us to actually develop something of this nature. Next, $10 million to provide an opportunity for community organizations and nonprofits to access funding for a variety of different projects related to human services and housing. So again, you name it. This goes from everything to mental, behavioral health, all the way up to affordable housing, homelessness, and you name it. And I know there's also a big need and push in the refugee community as well. These funds could be accessed by those communities as well. Next up, continuing our landlord incentive program. So again, in ARPA 1, you did allocate $1 million for this, and what this does is it incentivizes our landlords to rent to people that are on vouchers. And so again, we would look to continue to do that because again, we think this is another way to make housing more affordable for Phoenix residents. Also, looking to increase our staffing for the landlord and tenant program to increase support and education so that our residents know what their rights are as well as our landlords know how to operate within our programs. So this would also help us with all of those. Next, $1 million to develop a navigator. Again, as we talk about the variety of different services, one thing I hear over and over, not just from you, but also from community members, it's very difficult to manage and navigate the suite of services that the city provides. Some folks don't know where to begin, they don't know where to end. So we would like to get some housing navigators to help those members that are those residents that are at risk of losing housing or becoming unsheltered to get and find stable housing. Next, we move on to workforce and education. This program on your attachment A, we've got 16 programs lined up or actually for your consideration. Again, emphasizing over and over, and I can't say this enough, this is not an all-exhaustive list. I don't want anyone to get the thought or impression that we've thought of everything. I'm sure there are things that you've got in your mind or in your wheelhouse that you want us to consider, and by all means, let us know what those are, as well as give us feedback on these. So these 16 potential programs are submitted by 6 departments that include CED, Housing, Human Services, Library, Arts, and Parks. For today, for brevity, and just so that we have time for your conversation, I'm going to highlight just 6 of these programs. First, $5 million to provide support services in the form of stipends to individuals that are enrolled in ASU's Digital Workforce Apprenticeships and the AZ Next program. Next, $3 million to provide Wi-Fi infrastructure and service throughout the public housing complex. This highlights Edison Eastlake, but it actually would be more expansive than Edison Eastlake. I think this is just a little bit of a typo that we've got here and in the report. $2 million to continue ARPA small business training programs that have been also very successful. Again, we're looking for the workforce of the future. People are trying to change career paths, and this would be money that we could use to assist with that program as well. And then creating a tutoring program on the second floor of Burton Bar for $1 million. This would focus on high school students in high poverty areas and schools, as well as adults that are in need of earning a GED. Everything about ARPA is really based on QCT, qualified census tracts, and those that are really below poverty and at a certain income level. So we're focusing on that group here. Also, in workforce and education, we would like to continue and expand the library laptop and hotspot lending program at Phoenix Libraries. This has been a very successful program as folks try to stay digitally connected. They're also looking for ways for their children to attend school. If they're remote, they're also looking for ways for themselves to maybe interview or have job applications filled out. So this is something that's been very successful as well in the library department. Also, after-school programs, so $500,000 to enhance Phoenix after-school PAC programs to include tutoring, educational activities, and special interest classes. Next, we move on to neighborhoods, childcare, and seniors. In the attachment A, you've got 11 programs that focus on that were submitted by 5 departments, which include CED, HR, Human Services, Heat, Parks, and for the sake of brevity, again, we'll only discuss 4 of those 11 potential programs. The first is a 1-year child care voucher program to assist new employees with child care expenses. In ARPA 1, we did something similar for our public sector employees that are working at the airport, looking for opportunities for them to have quality child care. One of the things that we've come to realize here at the city, we've got certain job classifications that have been very difficult for us to fill as a result of some of the starting pay and the need to have child care. So our acting HR director, Dave Matthews, came up with this concept of having a voucher for 1 year for new hires in certain classifications at a certain economic level so that they could actually come into the workplace and afford child care. And so I thought that was a pretty ingenious idea on his part because our number of vacancies is increasing and it's becoming more and more difficult to fill city classifications. Next up, expanding our home weatherization assistance program to assist as many as 400 additional homes in qualifying census tract neighborhoods to receive comprehensive weatherization. This includes everything from, all of the different types of programs that are traditionally funded out of CDBG or home, but we would have funding to do this on a much grander scale here. And I know this was something that we did talk about at length when we were adopting the original ARPA plan. There was conversation based on some cities. I believe it was Councilwoman Ansari that talked about New York at the time that was doing things with air conditioning and things of that nature. And I know the mayor has also talked about different things in this area as well. Next up, we talk about resurfacing and renovating and converting our existing athletic fields in 8 parks that have underutilized courts and other park amenities. So that would take about $1 million based on staff's estimates. And next, identifying an additional 8 parks, it could also be the same 8 parks above, that don't have community centers, that are experiencing high incidence of crime, and implement a consistent park activation programs. So what we would be looking for here is this is also a crime deterrent. So I know one of the things that Treasury, as well as the White House, has highlighted over the last couple of weeks in conversation about ARPA and ARPA spending is creative and innovative ways to deter crime and get kids as well as young adults engaged and not commit to a life of crime. Next up, heat response and mitigation. We've got 5 potential programs in your attachment submitted by 4 departments, which include our Office of Heat, as Sustainability, Streets, and Water. We'll discuss 4 of those today here very briefly. One is funding our residential tree equity accelerator to provide up to 4 trees for 5,000 households in 25 qualifying neighborhoods. Again, one of the things that was part of our climate action plan was making sure that we have our tree and shade canopy at a certain level and trying to get there. One of the barriers to that is folks being able to actually afford to plant trees and then to maintain. So these funds could be used to seed that process and supplement that initiative under the climate action plan. Next, we could also look to use ARPA funding to fund shade structures in the public right-of-way and fund trees at 200 schools and preschools in qualifying neighborhoods. And staff has estimated about $6 million to do that and to make a real dent in our climate action plan. Also, funding green infrastructure and mobility improvements to address flooding, drainage, and mobility. If you recall, water, wastewater, and sewer are things that are specifically called out in ARPA. One of the programs and projects that is specifically referenced here is 5th Street in Durango. That is just one of many programs that staff have identified. Also, looking at water conservation projects such as smart irrigation controllers, toilet retrofits, and toilet rebates, as well as water mules. Again, $1.5 million to incentivize these areas for our residents. Again, given that we are in a drought and looking for ways to mitigate that and the impact it's having on our valley, this would also be another good use of stimulus dollars. Next, again, I already talked about this at length, so there's no need to really go into it much further other than to say we really want to continue this program. It's been successful. Residents love it. Staff gets really excited about it, and it's one that's easy to tee up because Roseanne is on autopilot, and this thing just runs. Also, last week, I'll handle these two together. Last week, we had a very robust conversation when I came to you and asked for the balance of our contingency in ARPA 1 because we were running out of our testing money. And so what you gave me last week was the $4.9 million that we're allocating essentially to continue the existing testing protocols that we have with our community-based partners and our vans for the duration of this fiscal year, as well as $1.4 million that I asked for to buy at-home test kits. I do have good news. So we engaged with the vendor last week, and I will hold up for you 2 different versions of tests. We took possession of 8,000 tests this morning. I'll have another 15,000 by the end of the week, and we've got a steady stream coming in. And so now we're working with Finance and Public Works to get these boxed up along with other PPE as well as other resources that we can start by giving to our community-based partners at our testing events as well as our vaccine events. We'll also provide some to council offices so that you can distribute to throughout your different meetings and your meetings that you have throughout the community, but also looking to kind of mirror what the county is doing. They're distributing through the library. So we would also like to do that, our senior centers, as well as parks and other city facilities. But what you have before you are 2 requests, basically totaling $25 million. The $15 million is to continue our existing testing protocols with our existing vendors for the duration of next fiscal year. But at the same time, I heard you last week say that we need more. We need more vendors, we need later hours, we need more opportunity. So that $15 million would allow us to do that, to expand the base of folks that we have available to make that happen. And then the $10 million is just that, for me to continue buying test kits as well as gloves, masks, and other promotional materials so that folks can be aware of what is happening with COVID and know where to get resources, know where to get help, and know what to do if they do by chance contract COVID. So, Mayor, members of the council, I know that's a lot. The intent was not for me to spend the majority of my time talking to you, but to hear from you. And so with that, I turn it over to you for you to ask us any questions about anything that I've presented today, anything that's in the report. We do have staff from the various departments available either in person or on WebEx. And again, we also are open and wanting for you to give us your ideas, your thoughts on how we should start allocating these funds. And I will come back to a future policy meeting. Thank you.
Wonderful, Jeff. Thank you for your presentation, your work on this, and thank you to all of Team Phoenix that worked on this. And again, this is a beginning conversation, but also an opportunity to reflect on how we have allocated funds throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And thank you to the federal government who's been our partner in these funds. We'll begin with Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple questions. And this is wonderful. And I'm really impressed with what the staff has come up, and I'm sure some of the council have given you suggestions as well. I do have some questions because you did say that you want to make sure that these expenditures don't actually end up being absorbed into our budget. Is that correct? Or as best as possible?
Councilwoman Stark, that's a great question. And again, my job has always been to protect the general fund. And yes. So I'm still looking to do that because I want to make sure that whatever we do now, we can sustain not just this year, not next year, but 5 years from now. I don't want future councils to be hamstrung by a decision that we make that we can't afford. So we are looking for things that do not have a very large footprint, ongoing footprint to the general fund. Now, there will be some things that may require additional funding, but those are items that I'm hoping then align with what we're proposing in the trial budget. So we could use kind of some of this ARPA funding to be the first step, and then the trial budget kicks those things forward.
Okay, thank you. Because I was looking at, for example, and I don't think this is a bad idea, create a tutoring center on the second floor of Burton Bar. That seems to me that could become an ongoing project that we would take on through our library department. Again, I'm not opposed to it, but I just want to make sure that if something like that, and it seems like a fairly insignificant amount, that we could maybe absorb it. As opposed to, let's say, tuition assistant program targeting 2-year and 4-year degree programs. That if there's a way, let's say we like that idea, is there a way that we can inform the public that this is a one-time because of ARPA funds? I don't want people to think down the road that future councils are going to accept this and say this is a great thing. So I wonder if there's a way we can make that distinction that it is ARPA funds and not an ongoing general fund issue.
Also a great question and a great point, Councilwoman. When I come back with the first version of the strategic plan, we will make sure that you are very clear and that it is very clear as to what would be ongoing versus one-time in nature. The intent of that particular program is that, again, it's one-time in nature because we do have these funds available. There may be options or opportunities in the future through creating a nonprofit. It's just something that I've also been looking at with the finance department. The city does not have a nonprofit. A lot of these cities that have those ongoing programs like that, what they're doing is they're using an arm of the city or the jurisdiction through a nonprofit, but getting philanthropic resources into that fund to provide that ongoing tuition and not general funds.
So like a Parks Foundation or a Library Foundation?
Correct.
Okay, great. And then I really do, I think I tend to want to fund one-time expenditures if at all possible so that we don't hamstring future councils. But I do appreciate a lot of these programs. On the issue of acquisition of multifamily complexes for affordable and workforce housing, is this for city projects only, or could we offer this to a nonprofit? For example, the House of Refuge has approached me about doing something in Sunny Slope to help people that are in need. Is there a way that we could say, sure, we'll fund buying the complex, but then it's up to you to operate. We walk away from it. Can we do that with that $50 million?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilwoman Ansari and then Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks so much, Jeff. This is a really, so many exciting programs, and bummed to hear that it actually accounts to more than we have left. Since there's so much here, I think I'll focus the first portion of my comments and questions and then come back later. I just wanted to emphasize that from my end, I think my number one priority, and I'm happy to see big buckets allocated here, is housing and addressing homelessness. I think both practically going from the perspective of many of these will be one-time costs, but then I don't think an opportunity like this will ever come around again. So, and we know that we have a housing crisis. We have a huge crisis outside the Human Services campus. We all know if you spend any time down there, it's a tragedy. So I hope that those allocations of the 50 million and the 20 million especially will stay. I think that's probably a minimum of what we need to address where we're at. And I don't know if you know this yet, but I'm wondering if you have any sense of how far the 20 million will get us. Like, how many smaller, more specialized facilities do you think that will come to?
So I can ask Titus and Marshall if they're here to come up and speak specifically to that. I know Titus has done a lot of legwork in terms of looking at the market, what's out there for sale in terms of like the multi-housing complexes that we could acquire. And I know Marshall has also been looking at the other side of that. So I'll bring them up.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, City Manager Barton, Mayor Gallego, and members of the subcommittee, members of the council. I apologize. Yes, one of the things that we have found out specific to the purchase and operation is the proposal was thinking that maybe we could allocate up to 10 million per property. We're basing that based upon some work that we've done with U.S. Vets, which our city manager mentioned, as well as in conversations that we've had with Maricopa County and what they've done, and Mesa and a couple of other cities across the nation. As the city manager mentioned, that's not a specific dollar amount, if we will, but we figure it takes about 10 million to acquire and all the things that are associated with acquisition of a hotel and retrofitting and those types of things. And I don't know if Titus, there's anything else you would want to add to that.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the council. In terms of affordable housing and apartment complexes and rehab, in addition to what Marshall just presented, we looked at apartment complexes across the city of Phoenix, across all districts, and currently we found there are about 15 complexes that it varies each time we run the list, but it varies in size and we looked at units having 25 units per complex all the way up above 100 units. So this, depending on the council direction, we can come back, as the city manager mentioned, and have more information to this point, but currently looking at buying existing apartment complexes for different uses between affordable housing and workforce housing.
And I would just emphasize to that point, part of the conversation that I had with Titus, the reason it makes sense to acquire existing is because you can't build it for cheaper. And so there are a lot of stock out there that may be available in the price per unit. This is one of the only ways to get it down to a reasonable dollar amount versus us trying to build it and it costs us more.
Okay, so to be clear though, that was the 50 million that's for workforce and affordable, right? Not the 20 million for unsheltered
Correct.
individuals. Okay, so that's helpful for that 50 million, looking at around 15 complexes. What about that 20 million? Is that just 2 properties at 10 million each then?
Based on what Marshall has just said, and when we acquired the U.S. Vets Hotel, that would be 2. But again, remember, that U.S. Vets Hotel was big, so there may be opportunity to scale that down to get more. It's all about the scale and the size of what you're acquiring and the number of units.
Okay, that's helpful. I'll have to do more research on it, but my initial reaction to that is I don't think 2 properties is gonna, I know there's other cities and regional plans and other buckets of money everywhere, and we're not the only ones working on this, but just in the past 3 months, the number of people outside the Human Services campus has increased from 200 to 500. It's probably going to continue to grow. And I assume based on how long these other facilities took, all of this will take a couple of years at least. So if anything, if we can do more of that, of acquiring these smaller, more specialized, the hotels, the properties that we can transition, maybe, I've heard from stakeholders that we need options for women, for younger adults, for LGBTQ, unsheltered individuals. So for me, I would like to see more of that. I don't think that's enough. And then the other point I just wanted to make is more around the short term. I feel extremely strongly that we are not doing enough to address the basics around the campus. The campus itself is doing great work, but again, with that population outside just growing so rapidly, I know that I've read the latest CDC guidelines. They say we need to be providing access to 24/7 bathrooms, water, sanitation, cooling, heating, and we're not doing much of that at this point. I know we're working on it, and it's been great working with city staff to work on that. But if it's gonna be years to see some of these programs up and running and these shorter term or these long-term housing options come to fruition, then I think we have to do everything we can and use ARPA funds to make sure we're addressing this crisis in a humane way. And I'd like to be involved with that in any way. So great. I was happy to see the $500,000 for the public restroom pilot program. That's great. I think the cooling bus last summer was very successful. Would like to see that continued. And then similarly heating in the winter time. But again, have had these conversations with you and with some others, but I think we need to really have someone really look at those CDC guidelines and make sure that we are following them. But yeah, otherwise, glad to see so much of the funding going towards this. I think it's the number one crisis that we're facing at this time. So thank you for that.
Mayor?
Thank you. Councilwoman Stark, did you want to react specifically to something Councilman Ansari
just
said?
a follow-up to what the councilwoman was talking about with regards to the 20 million. We're actually working on a transitional housing facility shelter up off of Bell Road, and they actually have a lot of it set up. And I think, could we then maybe help supplement what they're doing, Jeff? For example, they put up barbed wire fencing, which is not allowed in the city of Phoenix. Perhaps we could help with things like that.
Yeah,
Or are you really looking at buying new facilities?
I think we have to demonstrate some flexibility here, which is what we've demonstrated consistently over the last 2 years. And so what I would say to that is no, we're not exclusive to buying. I think there may be opportunities to make our money go further if an entity is bringing money to the table and we are leveraging what they also bring to the table. So that 20 could go much further if folks are bringing money to the table from other sources. But yes, it's not it's not a, buy it only. That's not our only option.
So we do have options on that. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And I agree with Councilwoman Ansari. Really, housing is probably one of our biggest issues in helping people experiencing homelessness. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for the follow-up.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilmember Garcia and then Councilwoman or Vice Mayor Pastor.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Jeff, and all the staff. I think we've had a lot of success with the last round of COVID dollars that we've allocated. We've invested heavily on public health and programming for our residents that I think is going to go far beyond this pandemic and change the city for a long time. For this next allocation of funding, I agree, and I'd like for us to make large investments in housing. I think that's our number one priority in our crisis. I agree with my colleagues. Our residents are facing rising housing costs, and we're in need of a lot more options. I appreciate a lot of the options that are on the table, including the community land trust, so that we can ensure safe, affordable housing for generations, not just the immediate. I think continuing to do the work on reducing the digital divide and the food programmings, the programs that have been so successful should continue, along with prioritizing the youth and recreational programming. Really excited about that. On the tuition support, I think we'd appreciate the ability to not only fund 2- and 4-year programs, but also apprentice and other training programs. Some of the specific projects I'd like to see as we move forward. I think the apartment complex or buying those facilities is important, and I want to specifically ask for something that can support refugees as transitional housing as they're getting here and figuring out. It was mentioned earlier, but we're finding more and more folks not wanting to take the vouchers that are given, and so being able to find a place that will for sure take vouchers or can take care of refugees would be important. There's already a coalition ready to take on this project to serve refugees that are arriving into the city. Directly to the conversation we're having, there's a really exciting project at St. Vincent's de Paul to expand their transitional housing program. They would add 100 more beds to their current program. What's also exciting about this is that the county has already committed $6 million. And so we would be matching the county to be able to create the program. So I think this is a place where we can kind of get more bang for our buck and actually go in half with the county, I think would be really important. And then with a reputable organization like St. Vincent de Paul, their current program has a 98% success rate in transitioning folks to stable housing. And so I'd be really excited if we could support that. Another project that I would request is in the land reuse area in the Barrios Unido neighborhood. We need some weatherization programs to support some of the families that are there. I would suggest $500,000 for that. This is an investment that's long overdue for a neighborhood that's kind of been in limbo because of the FAA and what's happened there, and even us, taking a role in the displacement of some of the folks and not supporting that neighborhood. So I'd appreciate being able to, support other vulnerable populations with a weatherization program, places like trailer parks and so on, but specifically would request support for this neighborhood in the Barrios Unidos area. Don't really have any questions. I think the flexibility that we've shown in being able to react and be able to address the issues that are coming at us We should maintain that. So I'm excited for this next iteration and proud to say that we've done what's best for the community. And I think in this go around, last thing I'll say, and I'm repeating from where I started, we should definitely look into long-term investments that will continue to give to the city for a long time. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Pastor and then Guardado.
Thank you. I really appreciate all the work that has gone into this. This is a very comprehensive piece that hits all the different areas that everyone on this council is passionate about. One of the areas that I would say probably all of us are most passionate about at this moment and urgent is the testing and the kits. And as we see COVID cases rise and more of us being affected by it, I think we should ask, or I'm going to ask the city manager to bring back a plan for the council's consideration that would expand and enhance our community testing efforts and provide PPE and other supplies to Phoenix residents in advance of the approval of the ARPA strategic plan. Because I believe this strategic plan is going to take us a while, and our need for that is now. So that's one item. The second item is I noticed that the digital divide was not included in this. And we are in the midst of the digital divide and being able to close it and finish it. Due to shipment, some of the equipment has been stalled, but it is moving, and would love to give you another update. So I would like to include that. What is nice about this is that it's a multi-generational plan where it does start with our seniors with Hot Meals, I believe, on wheels, and ends with our youth and everybody in between there that has a need, or we are trying to cover everybody. And so I think all populations deserve a piece of the ARPA money and need it, because we're not out of this. So I really appreciate everything that has been done and given. And so I'm assuming, and I'm not going to assume, this is for the city manager, we will then start from here and start to say, okay, we're willing in our next conversation to give this much to this program, but we think more resources should go here. That's what I'm assuming that the dialogue we're going to have in the future.
Mayor, members of the council, Councilwoman or Vice Mayor Pastor, you are correct.
Thank you.
You are correct. So today was just really about setting the table, and I'd say half setting the table, because again, I knew that I was going to leave key ingredients off that were in your heads that I may or may not know about. And so we will go back based on the feedback that we've gotten today. And again, I imagine there will be some time that will pass before I come back for the next bite at this. And in that time, I encourage you to get me your thoughts, to get the departments that have submitted something that you are vested in your thoughts, because that will help us shape what we come back with as part of this next round. My intent would be to bring back the next version in a strategic plan format that we could then really start talking about moving the chips and pieces around on the board.
Thank you, Councilwoman Guardado, followed by Councilwoman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, first I want to thank Jeff. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
First, I wanted to thank Jeff for all of your hard work on this plan. It's very telling that you have really listened to all of the council members as you're bringing this plan together. I think I love the work that has been done on this. It is a lot that we're trying to figure out as this pandemic continues to evolve and it continues to grow. and it continues to affect us in new ways. So I want to thank you and your team and your staff for all of the hard work that you guys have put into this. So like I said, this is a lot to digest, and something that we've been digesting for the last couple of years. But first, I wanted to start with the areas of focus I am really excited about. This pandemic has intensified our city's already growing housing crisis. So I am happy to see such a bold investment in housing. From transitional housing for those experiencing homelessness to multifamily workforce housing to growing our land trust, these funds are going to have an exceptional impact on so many. I am glad to see us supporting continued work on addressing a lot of the different issues. I know Councilwoman Vice Mayor Pastor talked about the digital divide, so I know that we'll continue to work on that, given that our children's future in school seems a little insecure given the numbers in the pandemic. I can tell you that as a mother of 2 young boys, I am also so happy for the investment this proposal is making in childcare. As parents as working hard parents, a lot of people are going back to work. They need to continue to keep their jobs. I think it's something that I continue to say over and over again. And childcare continues to be perhaps the biggest challenge. I know that Phoenix can be a leader with this investment. Finally, I am glad to see more funding for our parks to improve programming for our kids and providing our children with recreation to keep them safe and active. And now I want to go into clarifying a couple of points. And first off, I am glad to see us reinvesting and improving our PAC program. I think it's vital for our young students to get well-qualified skilled mentors and teachers in PAC. So my main question is whether the additional $500,000 allocated is going to be enough to provide the resources to our students, especially those that have fallen behind throughout the course of this pandemic. Is Cynthia there, or Jeff, or is there someone that can answer this question?
Councilwoman Guardado, Cynthia is coming down now.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Councilwoman Guardado, and members of the City Council. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I mean, my question was, the additional $500,000, is that going to be enough for the different programs that we've talked about for the PAC program, making sure that we're able to get the tutors and hoping to help families get their children caught up as they're transitioning into a new school year?
Sure, Councilwoman Guardado, Mayor, members of the City Council, I could walk you through what that model includes. The $500,000 is based on a one-year model. So for one school year, that would allow us to bring in a minimum of 2 tutors per PAC site 4 days a week, year-round, for that entire year. It would also allow us to bring in a special class instructor 1 day a week at all 33 PAC sites. So as you may be familiar with, PAC is broken down into 4 sessions. And so every session we would focus on a special interest class that participants could sign up for. One session it may be an art or painting class. Another session it may be karate or sports clinic or ballet. But that's the model, $500,000 1 year, 2 tutors 4 days a week, and 1 special interest class being offered every session.
So I do think that it's going to be important to let people know that this is a 1-year deal, given the conversations that we're having. And if it's something that's successful, I think it is going to be important to try and see where we can figure out how do we get the funds to continue to fund this in the future if we see that it has real success. So I think it's something that we should continuously think about. how do we evolve it? How do we keep it going if it is successful and we see the success rates at the school? So I think it's going to be crucial for us to talk to the schools to see how can we partner and how can we provide quality services to our students as we're moving forward. Great, but thank you so much for that, Cynthia.
Mayor.
Was that, and we'll go to Councilman O'Brien next, but I'm sorry, who was that?
It was Vice Mayor Pastor. I wanted to ask Cynthia a question.
But I'm not,
I don't know.
she can ask, but I'm not done yet. Yeah, you can go, but I'm not done yet. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Betty. Councilwoman Guardado. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, go ahead.
In the PAC program where I'm reading, it says to include tutoring, educational activities. What is included now in the PAC after school program?
Yes, Vice Mayor Pastor, Mayor, members of the City Council. The PAC program continues to follow a structure that has worked well for us. So there is a core curriculum that we have used for many years. It includes a daily schedule of activities that include a STEM activity, an arts and craft activity. There is time for homework time, so it's not tutors, but it's dedicated time for children to do their homework, and staff still go around and assist. There are literacy activities that are incorporated. So every summer, we have a core team. A lot of them are school teachers who create the PAC curriculum, and that's what it is implemented at every single PAC site throughout the year.
So there is opportunity for tutoring.
There is.
Are you now hiring specialized tutors in like reading, math? What is the tutoring?
Sure, Vice Mayor Pastor, Mayor, members of the City Council. In this model, the 2 tutors would be people that we hire to go in and provide more individual or small group tutoring. So people that would actually have the time to sit with PAC participants and help them a little bit more one-on-one or a small group settings. Our current PAC ratios are 1 staff to 20 participants. So with those existing ratios, it makes it challenging for them to have enough time to do that currently with existing staff.
Okay, so then it would be it's a very specific, they're being hired here. They're not being hired as a PAC employee.
Yes, Vice Mayor Pastor, that is correct. Great question. These would be individuals we hire separately outside of being a traditional City of Phoenix PAC employee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Cynthia. And then from there, my other comment was, or my other question was, I know that our collective water debt is growing, and I wanted to ask staff how best they think we could get in front of that issue. I know that that's come up in the last week. Should we use ARPA funds, or will more funds come from ERA or other buckets? Or should we be allocating money from here to that?
Councilwoman Guardado, I think that's a very difficult question to answer, and it only because the issue is such a complex issue. So we've kind of addressed this a variety of different ways over the last 2 years, from using CRF money to using ERA money, as well as using now ARPA money, the $5 million that you allocated last year specifically for the deferred arrangement program. I think one of the things that we need to look at is whether or not, we're doing enough on our end in terms of educating and reaching out to our residents that hold water accounts. So we may want to do this. One thing that we've got to be a little bit careful of is with ARPA, we can't just wipe out our debt. So we've got to be able to tie that debt and those delinquencies to specifically the pandemic. So some of that debt that is in our water system was there prior to COVID first hitting us, and folks have just been kind of deferring and kicking it and carrying it forward. That doesn't really avail itself theoretically. If a really good auditor comes in here to look at how we've used the funds, they could poke holes in that. So I think we're trying to walk a very fine tightrope in terms of making sure that what money we do avail from ARPA isn't just paying off debt, but it is tied specifically to accounts and arrearages that occurred during the pandemic. So we will look at that again, and possibly in the upcoming strategic plan, we may make another ask of additional funds specifically for the deferred payment and the delinquencies that you reference.
You know, Jeff, it'd be nice to know from when the pandemic started in 2020 and people were without a job, how much of that debt we actually still have. Like, I'd be interested to seeing how much of a dent we've actually put into that as well.
Yeah, the Councilwoman Guardado, Mayor, members of the council, the debt itself, I've looked at it with Troy and Catherine beforehand and Karen. It goes like this. It ebbs and flows. You know, it's also partially because of just the way some folks pay their water bill. They float their payment, so it may show delinquent today, and then a week later it's paid because they're waiting on a paycheck or something like that. I know there have been times where we've dropped the delinquency down, and then it spikes back up a few months later. But I can have Karen and Troy work and put together a report for you that kind of addresses that. What was our debt beforehand? What does our debt look like now? What were the impacts when we actually did infuse stimulus money into those delinquencies, just so you can kind of see the ebb and flow. But we'll work on a report for you, and we'll try and get it in a Gen Info packet shortly.
And then, do you know how much money we still have to give out, or have we run out of that money?
I know as of my last accounting, there was still quite a bit of it left. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but we've got quite a bit of it still left. I can get that to you as well.
Yeah, because I think it'd be good to see a new plan as well from what we still have left over. I think we need to do some digital ads. I think we have to figure out a way, how do we get people refocused again on answering their phones or calling the city? Because I you know, there's a part of me that believes that people might have forgotten that that money is still available for them. So I think there has to be some sort of like reach out campaign that I know that we did some of that last year, but maybe it's time to do some of that again to get rid of all those funds that we still have left over, because our accounts are delinquent. So I'm not sure if that's also something that we can try to do again.
Yeah, I'll put together I'll get with Karen and Troy and put together a very comprehensive report on our delinquencies and the impact of our programs that we've tried to do over the last couple of years with COVID dollars specifically. I also know that the deferred payment arrangement program, you know, folks had to make so many payments before we paid off the balance. So it could also be a timing issue with that in terms of them having not met that arrangement yet before we pay off their debt. But we'll put all that together for you in a report.
Okay, great. And then we have also received a lot of positive feedback from our schools when we have dropped off PPE for the students. I know they are still struggling. I know that Emmanuel from my office dropped off more masks in the last week as well into the school. So the demand, as other council members have said, is really high, and schools are really struggling. And I know, and is there a way where we can get kids N95 masks, given the new CDC guidelines, how they're saying that the cloth masks are no longer a protection for folks?
So, Mayor, members of council, Councilwoman Guardado and Councilwoman Pastor, based on some of her comments earlier, and technically all of you from last week's conversation, the intent for us moving forward is that we do put together these combating COVID kits, which would include gloves, masks. You know, they will include information about where our testing van is going to be, where county resources are, you know, what to do if you get COVID. And so we would plan to start packaging those things as soon as we had funds available. To the Vice Mayor's point earlier today, if I'm waiting completely until the ARPA plan to get done, it's going to be some time before I get there with additional resources. So based on what I'm hearing, it sounds like there is at least some interest in possibly bringing something back early. So I can go back with my team, Finance, Public Works, that have been helping on the testing side of things as well as the acquisition of PPE, and put something together and try and bring it back at a formal for action in advance of the full-fledged strategic plan, and just slice something off the top, because we all know we're going to allocate some resources to testing and community safety. So if you're okay, if the council's okay with that, I can work towards bringing that forward at a future formal for action, since we're not posted for any action today. And we would work with schools. Zach, our former intern that's now a happy finance employee, he is super excited about dropping off this PPE wherever he can. I mean, I think if I told Zach to drive to North Dakota, he would drive to North Dakota and drop off PPE. So he's excited, and the schools would be a great resource for us to distribute, because again, these kids are actually turning out and appear to be vectors of this latest strain. So if we could provide them with PPE as well as testing kits to take home to their families, that would be a great partnership as well.
Great. And then I know we had previously supported schools, HVAC, and air circulation improvements. Have we been able to get in touch with our school districts to make sure they know that this money is out there?
Councilwoman Guardado, Mayor, members of the council, we have not specifically had direct conversations with the school district in regards to these funds this round, and primarily because they do have access to some funds on their own as well, direct allocation, as well as pass through from the state. But if that's something that the council is interested in us looking into, trying to fill gaps that they may have, like we did with Digital Divide and some of the computer resources, we can do that as well.
Yeah, because I do think that at least with some of the schools that I've spoken to, or some of the school districts, they have so many needs. So if there's a way where we can help, we continue to help with that, especially now where we have so many teachers that are now being infected by COVID. So now we're seeing a lot of classrooms a lot more crowded with a lot more children. Air circulation, whatever we can do as a city to help out. But I think it's something that the schools and our parents would definitely appreciate. And then lastly, and I promise you, no, go ahead.
No, I was just saying we'll do it. We'll follow up.
Okay. Perfect. And then lastly, on the issue of weatherization funding, would mobile homes be able to access that bucket of money?
That I'd have to look into. I don't want to answer that one off the cuff, because I know, whether or not they constitute home from the perspective of the federal guidance. I need to go through that. But again, we'll look into it. We'll explore.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all I have. And again, thanks, Jeff, for your hard work and your leadership in the city, and to all of your staff for all of the hard work. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, thank you to Jeff and the staff for such a comprehensive list. And I, like some of my fellow council members, am pleased to see a large amount of the dollars potentially slotted for working on our housing issue for our unsheltered. And I would like to have, I think, a meeting with Titus and some of the other folks regarding some more in-depth questions about these programs and how we make it most beneficial for the long term and serve as many folks as possible across the city. As Councilwoman Ansari has noted, and many others have seen and noticed that that population is growing, and it would be also nice to keep people from entering that population. So transitional or other kinds of assistance would be awesome. I also want to reiterate some points that I think Councilwoman Stark made, is that it's important that this be one-time funding, so we don't have that hit to future budgets, or have future council members be committed to some items that may not be as needed ongoing. as it relates to the some funding for the continued laptop and hotspots across the, I guess, in libraries to lend out, are we running out of those on a regular basis, Jeff, or is someone there to answer that question?
Let me see if, I believe we got someone here to answer that question. Oh, she's online. So we'll turn it over to Rita.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Rita.
Hi, Councilwoman O'Brien, members of the council. Yes, we have been able to check out many of the laptops, so they are very popular. But the hotspots are even more popular because not everyone has access to the internet at their home. So yes, it's been a popular program, and we would like to refresh it because we could get more of those out into the community.
And how do you know roughly how many that would afford us to buy, having about $1 million?
I think we can get at least 500, and I think we did 1,000 hotspots with the last go round. So I think we'd be able to replenish very nicely with the money, $1 million. Yes.
Okay, and then libraries has the College Depot program in the Central Library, and I love that program. I'm excited about the transition or the way they were able to pivot with COVID and go virtual and for students across the city. I'm wondering, are we able to put some small sections in some libraries in the different districts across the city where it would be most needed, so students could come in and have the equipment, the laptop, access to internet for those virtual appointments?
Councilwoman, Mayor, members of the committee, we have not had staff out in other locations that have those particular skills, but we do have computers in every location that people can use to do a virtual session with the staff in College Depot. So that's how we can extend our reach to every location, is by doing the streaming processes, and then they can get the same information and help that someone coming down here in person would get.
And so could some of those be dedicated or reserved for those College Depot times or appointments that are necessary?
Yes, Councilwoman, that would be possible. Yes.
Okay. And related to Councilwoman Guardado's questions about, and maybe Vice Mayor Pastor's questions around the PAC program, I would also be interested in, if we do decide to utilize some money for tutors, how would we determine that that is impacting our students and that we're achieving some kind of a success there?
Councilwoman O'Brien, Mayor and council members, we have not put a true plan in place for that, but what we've been doing typically is we're giving the student a questionnaire when they're finished and with the tutoring, and we get their feedback on how they feel, they've been able to progress. So
okay,
we can, we can look at expanding that process to all.
Thank you so much, Rita. I appreciate it. I appreciate you answering my questions.
And Cynthia can also expand on that, since you were referencing the PAC program. Cynthia can add some more context to that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councilwoman O'Brien, Mayor, members of the City Council, to answer your question, Councilwoman O'Brien, we'd have to create a tool or find an existing tool that can help us measure that success. So it's something we definitely want to work with Rita if they have a tool like that that exists in the library department, or work with the school districts to gauge exactly what we would be measuring. But that's an excellent point and something that we will note that we will have to establish.
And Councilwoman O'Brien, one thing that we could do, and I'm going to date myself here, when I was in high school, I actually helped found a nonprofit that did a summer food program that was basically an enrichment program. And I was successful in getting a pretty significant Department of Education grant. And what we did is we took snapshots of every kid that was entering the program, their grades prior to and their grades post. And we were able to show significant improvement in their educational attainment as well as their reading levels and all of those things. So we could do something similar on this to show growth and the importance of the program.
I think that would be an excellent idea. Jeff, I was going to also date myself by saying, you could have to show your paper report cards. I know it's been a long time, and some council members maybe didn't even have paper report cards, but so that if they're willing to share those with us, or their families are willing to, that would be an awesome way to be able to really see that true growth in academic achievement. Would be very exciting. Thank you, Cynthia and Rita, for answering those questions. And then I guess I'm going to, my last questions will be regarding the $13 million that we have potentially allocated for a child care voucher program. And while I realize, these are one-time dollars, is there a chance that this could become an ongoing expense, Jeff?
Councilwoman O'Brien, Mayor, members of the council, that again, it was depending upon what our status is. And I think if we were to make this an ongoing program, that would be something that we would also probably want to roll into conversations with labor at the time we go into labor negotiations, because that is something I think that the council should get credit for from a service provision to our council, to our employees.
Okay. I'm certainly interested in having more discussions about this item, and I'm curious, have we been hearing feedback that childcare is a reason folks aren't coming back to work, or aren't coming to work, or can't accept a job?
I've got both Lori Bays and David Matthews, I believe, on the line. So if we could start maybe with David Matthews on the line, start with him first, and then we can add context with Lori if needed.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. David Matthews. We have seen many articles across the nation and many discussions regarding workforce returning to work or entering the workforce, and this child care barrier that may exist. So this item is really to take a deeper dive into that and how it could be used as a recruiting tool for new employees coming in, that may be the barrier between them coming to work for the city or not.
Okay. So it's maybe we can sit down with you and address some of my more in-depth questions regarding this program.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And then as it relates to the Phoenix Resilient Food System program, does that include bringing farmers markets to some of our food desert areas?
Mayor, members of the council, I'll turn it over to Roseanne Albright, who I believe we've got on the line.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Roseanne Albright, Councilwoman O'Brien, Mayor and council members. On the farmers market end, we do have some funding that would be available to those that would be interested in bringing more farmers markets. We would initially focus on food desert areas, and then if there were funding available, we could move outside of that as well. So yes, it does.
Okay, and related, Roseanne, to farmland preservation, is that just financial assistance for farmland preservation, or are we actually acquiring land?
For the Farmland Preservation Program, in this first year, we are focused on private properties. In the second year of funding that we've proposed, we have added the option to include existing city-owned properties where we would place an agricultural conservation easement. So for now, the intent would not to be to acquire new, but to explore existing properties.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Roseanne.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jeff and staff, for, again, a very comprehensive plan. I look forward to having some additional meetings to delve deeper into some of these ideas to better understand what we're proposing and what long-term impacts will be for our constituents and potentially our future budgets. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Sorry.
Mayor, may I say something?
Please, Councilman Waring.
Thank you, Mayor. So just quite a few members have mentioned it, and I would certainly agree. The homeless issue, it's just one that I hear about a lot in District 2, but I think it's prevalent all over the city and certainly increasing, very noticeable. It also, I think, ties up a lot of public safety resources. For example, we have, state trust land and you get people out in the desert and so forth. That can be a very dangerous situation, so it's not just police. It also be fire and emergency services. I understand Jeff's comments, and certainly, Jeff, as you know me well, really appreciate them about not starting programs that then get transferred over to the general fund. But for something like the homeless issue, where we've really struggled to find effective tools, if this is an opportunity to, I don't want to say practice, I don't know what the word would be, but to find things that maybe we're not doing right now that have been either tested or shown to be effective in other locales, and we can try them and see if they work here for us. If they do, they might supplant or be added to programs that we already have. And so I just think it's also maybe an opportunity to explore what other places have done, maybe that we're not doing, that might have been effective. Because this isn't a problem that's going away. We want to help these folks as much as possible, and also, be respectful of the people who feel like, some of their quality of life is being infringed on by people roaming through their yards or whatever. And that's what we've had in my district. So I hope that makes sense. I don't know, Jeff, if you have any comments on that, but that would be something that I think it would behoove us to take a look at if we have an opportunity. Thank you.
Councilman Waring, I think that's an excellent point, and I know staff has been evaluating some of those options, and I know even some of our council members took a little field trip last year to explore some of those items as well. So we'll continue digging into that, but I definitely agree this is the time for us to invest in ways we haven't been able to do that may be able to make us make a transformational impact on our unsheltered and homeless population.
Councilwoman Ansari.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a couple other comments and questions on some of the items in addition to housing and addressing homelessness. Just wanted to add that I'm very excited to see investments in tuition assistance, job training, and continuing to build our workforce. I know this is missing from the presentation today, but was included in the larger packet. It was a $5 million allocation in tuition assistance that I think would be a very, very worthy use of these funds. And it's something that I and a few of my colleagues advocated for in the first bucket of ARPA. And to remind folks, the vision is like a Promise Phoenix program emulated off of successful programs that have been set up in other cities in Arizona and across the country. And Jeff, I know that you and your team had done some research on this, and last year we didn't put it in there because of timing. Do you have any sense at this point, if we were to approve this funding, if we'd be able to get it up and running for the 2022 to 2023 academic cycle?
Councilwoman Ansari, Mayor, members of the council, I think the 2022-23 year may be a little tight, only because, again, we've got to negotiate contracts. We don't have a nonprofit currently There may be an opportunity for us to leverage an existing nonprofit that does provide a similar service, either ACF, and I know there are some others that folks have brought to my attention as well. I don't want to get anyone's hopes up to think that we can make fall semester of 22-23. I just know, being a parent myself, having to do my daughter and son's FAFSA, those deadlines are like right now to get considered for funding and have all that stuff in place. So I would say, latter part of the academic year, I think we could definitely have something. I would just not want to make a promise to you that I can't keep saying that I would hit fall semester of 22-23.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. It's moving very quickly, but excited to work with you on this. I think this is a program that will directly serve our younger students, high school and college age residents, and we know it's worked in other places. I think we can create our own model that works really well. So excited about that. Regarding the Burton Barr Tutoring Center for students experiencing poverty, I think that's awesome. I guess I'm just a little bit hesitant on the accessibility of that and wondering why maybe exclusively this would take place at Burton Barr. I'm sure staff is considering a virtual component, and I'm also wondering if we're considering offering free transit to get there. But have we also explored, because I believe that was a $1 million allocation. I'm wondering if we can expand that throughout other parts of the district to not make people travel so much for a service like this that's so needed.
Councilwoman Ansari, we can definitely explore that. I believe, and Rita can clarify if necessary, I believe the reason that we highlight Burton Barr with that program, because that's where College Depot operates out of, and we've already got all of the resources and infrastructure there. I'm not sure if, Rita, you want to add anything to that?
Jeff and Councilwoman, yes, you are completely right. Most of the staff that work at College Depot are here, but we do have some funds that we can use to pay for people to use mass transit to come down here. So we do have that program, but we can certainly look into other ways to extend our reach out throughout the whole city. So we'll take a look at that.
Okay, and maybe there's good hybrid locations we could look at that are in the middle of a couple council districts with the most need for a service like this. Even if there was 1 or 2 satellite locations, I think that would be a big help.
Absolutely, thank you.
Great, and then also wanted to voice my support for the funds being allocated for childcare, Levine seniors to prevent isolations, as well as upgrading parks in underserved areas. We have many of those in District 7. And then regarding the climate and sustainability items, I am a big supporter of using a portion of these funds for the current to upgrade and expand our current weatherization program and reach even more Phoenix families. Weatherizing more homes will mean significant cost savings and protection from summer heat for our most vulnerable population. So I think what we could do to improve here is just more effective outreach and education. I also had the exact same question as Councilwoman Guardado regarding the mobile home. So looking forward to a response there. And then the other question I had regarding this was whether we know if the weatherization program translates or how they translate to multifamily and rental homes, where many families also bear the brunt of high utility bills due to weatherization issues.
So Dave, do you want to come up and or is that Spencer? Spencer's going to come to the table now.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, Councilwoman Ansari. Yes, with our current weatherization program, we can partner with multifamilies and landlords to provide to provide weatherization assistance to decrease utility bills for their renters.
Okay, great. And to clarify, you don't know the answer to the mobile home question, right?
So with our current weatherization program, we can assist mobile homes. I would imagine under the ARPA, we may be able to as well, but as Jeff mentioned, it is a slightly different funding source, so we would want to verify that.
Got it. Okay, Great. And then the other piece of all of this, I think the Tree Equity Accelerator is a phenomenal program. Did want to give a big shout out to Dr. Handula, who pretty much just started and who's really hitting the ground running. I know he put forward some very ambitious proposals for funding, and I know that, you know, there are other buckets of money that we could look to, like the infrastructure bill to fund many of these things. But I did want to get a sense, if he's available for questions, what sort of advantages he sees by being able to get this money and hit the ground running now, since trees obviously take time to grow. So that would be helpful to understand why this pool of money as opposed to maybe some of the other funding sources that are coming later on.
Councilwoman Ansari, Mayor, members of council, thanks for the question. I think the answer from my perspective, and I appreciate your comment on the time it will take trees to grow, is simply that we are in the very early stages of exploring what opportunities might exist through infrastructure funding, and we are looking very closely at partnering with departments on those channels, but we may not be applying for funding for those for several months down the road, and I think it would be a missed opportunity if a planting season or two goes past. Every time we are in any community engagement setting, we hear very clearly that there's a strong need for more trees and a readiness to act for more trees. And I think we can be more responsive to that need by putting some of this funding to work in addition to infrastructure money. We're not going to run out of opportunities for tree planting by spending this money and infrastructure money and maybe other opportunities.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and very much like the Tree Equity Accelerator to help the individual homes. I think the number was 5,000 individual homes that would benefit from this. And I also thought the piece around supporting schools, 200 some schools in planting trees and providing shade is a great one as well. I'm sure folks I'm sure the numbers will change around, but I think the concept is there and would love to be able to support you in hitting the ground running and all of the work that you have laid out for yourself. And then finally, the other item that I didn't see in the packet, but I had read a preliminary proposal for, was a community solar program for qualified census tract areas. I know this program would have immediate direct impact by cutting electric bills for residents in half, if not more, while also hitting climate goals. So would just be interested in learning more about that and whether that's definitely off the table, or as Jeff said, if this was just not a fully comprehensive list, so we could consider putting that back in.
Councilwoman Ansari, Mayor, members of the council, yeah, this list was not fully, all exhaustive. So there are many things on here that you may have heard about, thought about, wanted to be included. You bringing it to our attention now is also another indicator that there's at least some legs on this thing. But Mark Hartman is at the table now and can answer some questions from you on that.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Mark. I don't know if you wanted to just elaborate more on the program, and you and I have talked a lot about, the best use of funding and different tranches of money. And we know that on the EV front, this may not be the best route, but I'd love to hear from you around this community solar program proposal and how it would benefit vulnerable populations in our community.
Yes, good afternoon, Councilwoman Ansari, Mayor, members of council. This potentially has transformative when paired with home weatherization, in the sense that it's really transformative where typically where we might give rental assistance for a single year, a solar on a low-income home could provide it for 30 years to cut the bill in half or 3/4. So it really eliminate energy poverty in this case, what was proposed 200 homes. So looking at the full pool of who neighborhood services might consider eligible for weatherization, we look at which ones are suitable and most practical. And then we partner with some community partners who are able to provide sort of that support to homeowners in selecting their system and identifying the best approach and ensure they're installed according to best practice. So some real opportunity. I think it does make a nice pairing with the weatherization program.
Okay, great. So that's interesting. So in theory, you could do each program individually, but you're saying it's more powerful when both are done at the same time.
Yes, particularly if, when you're actually making the home more energy efficient, and so the solar will actually be more productive and actually have a greater increase on the bills. So if you're going to put solar on the roof, it actually will perform much better if you actually do, air sealing, and you do, upgrade the air conditioning system and make the home more efficient, and then the solar will actually lower the bills even further. So a real opportunity there. I think the two together are the most powerful.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mayor.
Thank you, Mark. If you don't mind staying there, I have a related question. Have we assessed our city housing facilities for solar? We've done some very successful investments, but not at every location.
Yes, thank you. And that actually was another part of the proposal that was prepared. And it's actually was looking at applying solar to the facilities that we have in the qualified census tracts within these same communities. So in the same place that we're investing on solar on the homes, we could look at libraries, community centers, and fire stations, and have solar on those and really buy it down. So that would actually be beneficial for lowering the operating costs of those facilities. So it'll actually ongoing benefit to the general fund simply by that investment. So that is a good opportunity and allows the community to see that investment within their neighborhoods as well.
Wonderful. And I would particularly be interested in continuing our investments at our city housing facilities. We got good feedback from the residents who liked the covered parking and the impact on energy bills.
Yeah, and certainly on the housing facilities, we've done 9 of them already, and want to continue to invest in those. And those are really great opportunities because, in particularly with partnering with APS's community solar program that they're planning on extending, it actually gives a bill credit to all the residents within those facilities. So those are a great opportunity.
Wonderful. Well, I think those are both great ideas. Thank you to Councilwoman Ansari for bringing it up. That is all I had for Mark. I do agree with the Councilwoman on solar and the tree investments, as well as investing in the smaller, more specialized shelters. I think that makes sense and is consistent with what we hear from our residents. They don't want, or people who are living in the facilities prefer the smaller, more targeted facilities. And I agree with Councilwoman Stark about acquiring the facilities for nonprofits. Since we don't have an ongoing funding source for these, I think that capital investment makes sense. And I think at least 4 of my colleagues maybe have mentioned specifically those one-time dollars for one-time expenditures. I would love to see as much as possible that we're investing in capital projects where we can show our residents from years to come how the investments we made with ARPA dollars are continuing to help them. And some of these programs are wonderful, but I wonder if we're going to continue doing them, should we look for ongoing funding sources? So it being human trafficking today, I think it's wonderful that we're talking about Starfish Place, but we may want to do workforce programs for that facility for years to come. And so I would welcome looking at WIOA or other ongoing funding sources for some of these and seeing if we couldn't use ARPA dollars for one-time capital investments, including at Starfish Place, which is a huge success and credit to all who worked on it. Agreed with Council Member Garcia about Barrios Unidos, and I would add that we might also make those investments around the Human Services campus, where is some of the similar needs and rationale. Glad to see we're continuing to invest in our arts, which are so vibrant, and our small businesses. And again, would love to look for capital opportunities there. I think one program that likely would stay one time if some of these job training investment programs, because of the unusual number of people in transition right now. And I'm very excited about training people for biosciences, semiconductors, financial technology, and other technology centers, as well as purchasing equipment and software for the mobile career unit. City Manager, I appreciated your comments about being responsive to the guidance from Washington, D.C. about community safety, and I'm glad to see that was included. Also wanted to echo the comments about support for the weatherization assistance program. I got the folks at FSL, who are great leaders on weatherization, took me out and I touched one of the trailers that they were weatherizing, and it was so hot my hand burned. So a stark reminder that our summer heat can have huge impacts Appreciate the investments in shade structures and EV charging stations and green infrastructure. And on green infrastructure, the council packet specifically mentioned one project in particular, but to me, the needs in our city go beyond that one project. Also glad to see us investing in water conservation projects. It's not the most glamorous things, but toilets are major water users. I'm not sure it's water mill, maybe not exactly water conservation, but does help us reduce plastic water bottle use and does seem valuable in heat management as well. And just generally, I think we're going to have to be increasingly focused on water and its scarcity and the drought and making sure that we manage our water supply, which is very scarce in a way that is always top of mind. I did want one question for Jeff about IT investments. One of the things that I have gotten great feedback is as we've provided more services online, people have felt like they could stay at home, not be exposed to COVID, and usually get their work done more quickly. Some of our small businesses have mentioned to me they would love to see us invest in some of our payment portals, particularly for people who have regular tax payments to us. But I am just generally bullish on e-government investments. Is there anything we're looking at in that area?
Mayor, members of the council, good question, Mayor. I think we've got a list of things from IT. The thing that we start to run into with them is the time frame in which to get these projects done using ARPA money. So we think there may be opportunities using some of the infrastructure money and some of the other funding sources that may come our way for some of our IT projects, because it's going to take them a considerable amount of time to manifest in some of those areas. The other thing is, I think that you'll see, based on some of the conversations that we've had over the last 2 to 3 years, we've got a significant backlog in investment in our infrastructure and technology as a whole. And so I think when we start talking about bond program, you'll also see some discussion about needs for capital relative to IT. But for ARPA, other than the digital divide item that I know we did not include here because we're still working through some details between CED and IT, I'm not necessarily thinking about any internal city investment using ARPA funding at this point in time.
Wonderful. Well, I do think it's something we are hearing from the community for opportunities to invest. And it's been exciting to see how many things like our planning department processes that have gone substantively online with great feedback from the community and some safety benefits. COVID is still very much with us, and I'm glad to see we're investing in improving access to testing and vaccinations and KN95 masks. I've not heard as much about gloves from the public health community. But for me, the great news you started with about the 8,000 at-home test kits and more arriving soon was a definite highlight of the meeting, and want to continue to make those investments and partner with county public health and others to make sure that we get as much support as we can. Vaccines for our youngest residents are also very much on my mind, just with some of the recent trends in that area. And I would love to do more in those areas and partnerships with schools if they are interested in doing so. A lot of folks are watching the different trends with COVID and young people now, and we're hoping we can continue making sure that they stay safe. So priority on my list. I think I heard Councilwoman Stark, or saw Councilwoman Stark raise her hand for comments.
Yes, just very quickly. Under the Public Works continue and expand COVID community testing and vaccination events, is there any way that we could also get a list of other entities that are doing this so that we can help communicate that through social media? For example, I know the county does some vaccination and community testing. I'm not talking about the CVS and the Walgreens, but other nonprofits and other entities like that, so that maybe we have an all-inclusive list that we can share with our residents. I know actually one of my staff people was trying to get a test through the city and couldn't, so she turned to another location. So maybe we could get that message out and help our residents. Hopefully that's not a lot of work for staff to do. Again, just other governmental entities and nonprofits.
Councilwoman Stark, we can work on that. I actually don't think it's that difficult because we do have ongoing dialogue with Maricopa County Public Health Department. Our fire department and as well is engaged with them. So I think we can get a relatively short order a list. And I think that's also the intent of trying to put together these combating COVID kits so that we would have those resources available so that everyone knows where testing opportunities are.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Any additional council member comments? Well, thank you. It's wonderful that we have the opportunity to make these investments in helping our community navigate real challenges, and appreciate all the thought that has been put into today's council comments as well as the staff work to get us here. To our city manager, do you have any final comments before we close?
Mayor, the final comments I would make is just thank you for your participation, all of you. This was very helpful for us so that we can at least get a view into your world, into what's important to you. And so I'll go back with my team and we'll kind of refine this over the next couple of weeks. Again, if you have follow-up information for individual departments and programs, I would encourage you to meet with them. We will also be meeting with them, me, myself, and the team that I've got helping me facilitate this plan. The other thing, based on what I've heard everyone collectively say from last week to this week, I think I won't wait for the completion of the strategic plan for our community testing expansion and test kits. I'll try and bring something back to you as soon as I can pull it together for a formal action.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who worked so hard to make sure we could get more testing kits out in the community. With that, we are adjourned. We're going to continue to make these investments with our strong